here. So, good afternoon and welcome to our panel discussion. My name is Adil Nathani and I'm a board member here at Green Ummah. I'm so excited that we're joined by so many of our friends and family from around the world. And we thank you for spending the next hour with us as we dive into this much needed discussion on the environment and what we can do as stewards of the earth during this month of Ramadan. We've invited a range of speakers who have been doing work in the environmental movement far beyond what Green Ummah as an organization has been able to do since its inception only a year and a half ago. I want to thank Zara Abbas from Omano in Studio 89, who has been the driving force behind this event, and welcome Imam Talha and Megan Emery as our co-panelists. Now, before we start today's panel, it is vital that we acknowledge the land on which we gather today. I know that we are likely located on different lands in different countries, given that this is a virtual conference. So I will recognize the land on which I am. I currently occupy space as an uninvited guest in the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples. Scarborough is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I encourage you all to take a moment to reflect on where you are. If you don't know and you're in Canada, there are resources available to you, such as native-land.ca, and I'll throw that in the chat box once my introduction is over. With that, I'll do a quick introduction of our speakers for today. We will have Mariam Rajabali. Mariam Rajabali is completing her final year at the JD program at the University of Windsor, and she's the president of the Muslim Law Student Association. She is a co-founder and board member of Green Ummah, an organization that aims to inspire environmentally friendly and sustainable daily practices in the Canadian Muslim community, also the organization that is hosting this event. Through her advocacy, she aims to empower young people and diversify community-based nonprofit organizations. We'll also have Zahra Abbas. Zahra Abbas is the executive director of Omano, which is working to directly inspire empathy and advance storytelling for humans, animals, and the environment. Omano funds nonprofits who are seeking to build sustainability and financial resilience through social enterprise. Zahra is also the founder and volunteer president of Youth Troopers for Global Awareness and its social enterprise, Studio 89, a nonprofit community hub and fair trade vegan cafe in Mississauga, Ontario. Although the space is temporarily closed, developing a second location is underway with a partnership with Daniels Corporation. Zara has also recently endeavored a filmmaking quest for a documentary called Halalified, featuring 45 vegan Muslims worldwide. You can learn more about them at umano.org or studio89.org. I will also throw these websites into the chat once I conclude the introduction. Imam Talha is our next speaker, and he's based out of Frankfurt, Germany. He has studied Islamic theology and education at a bachelor's and master's level. His research interests are in Muslim history in Africa, Islam and gender, and animal ethics in Islam. Imam Talha works in the field of CVE, or countering violent extremism, and in this context, he provides counsel to affected persons, relatives, schools, authorities, and detainees in prison. As an active imam in various communities and mosques, he regularly presents seminars, Friday sermons, and lectures on all aspects of Islam, including the above topics, and he's an ambassador of Green Iftar, which you can find on Instagram at Green Iftar, a campaign by Muslims for Muslims to inspire and motivate us to make iftar sustainable during Ramadan at home and in our communities. Last but not least, Megan Emery is a food scientist with over 14 years of experience in research and development designing and commercializing products for the North American food industry. Her bachelor's in science in nutrition, keen interest in health, compassion for animals, and concern for Mother Earth led her to plant-based eating. She is an absolute foodie and she adores learning about new ingredients, recipes, and the stories behind them. She also attended George Brown Culinary School in Toronto, but by no means considers herself a chef. So with these introductions out of the way, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what's going to happen. We're going to start off with Mariam, who's going to be discussing everyday actions for an environmentally friendly Ramadan, including how to reduce waste. Then we're going to move on to Zahra, who's going to discuss how to calculate environmental footprints, including giving us online tools. Then Imam Talha will discuss mindfulness and compassion in Islam. And then Megan will discuss climate conscious iftars and sahurs. And then we'll have some time left over for Q&A at the end, inshallah. Before passing it on to Mariam, I will say, please feel free to post your questions in the chat or raise your hand in the Q&A segment in the final 10 minutes or so of the event. I also encourage you to engage with us on social media at Green Ummah on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn more about reducing waste, which is our theme for our Ramadan 2021 campaign. And with that, I'll pass it on to Mariam.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I just wanted to check technology-wise if everyone can see the PowerPoint. A quick thumbs up would be great for those who are on video. Okay, awesome. So thanks so much, Adil, for the really kind introduction, and Ramadan Mubarak, everybody. I'm going to get right into it. There's so much research that I came across when I was looking into this topic, and really trying to find practical ways in which we can make very small changes in our everyday lives to live more consciously. So I'll just jump right into it. So as you know, every day is filled with so many decisions. The thing to keep in mind, though, is to reduce the amount of resources and energy that are used to manufacture, market, and distribute products and services to consumers. This is what I try and keep in mind when I'm looking at the decisions that I am making. There's many ways of framing this for yourselves, but this is what I find is most helpful. So today's presentation, I'm going to be going through this type of framework of waste reduction and really focusing primarily on refusing. And what I mean by that is refusing anything that will end up in the trash. I'll go into a little bit more detail when we get there, but that's the focus of the presentation. And then also chatting a bit about reducing and repurposing, so reimagining things that have a different purpose, but using it for what you need today. Replacing things, and what I mean by this is use what you have until you can't, and then change it to a more sustainable option. And then as a very last resort, recycle. This is quite different than what we used to learn in middle school and high school, where recycling was, the gold standard. I want us to kind of look beyond that and see if we can improve the earth in a different way and try and make a healthier and cleaner planet for all of us. So let's start with refusing. So this is really what I call a proactive or a prevention mechanism. I'm not sure how many of you know, but to break down a plastic bag, it takes anywhere from 500 to 1,000 years. And the amount of plastic produced in 1 year is about the same as the entire weight of humanity. And this year, the world will dispose 5 trillion bags of plastic, 5 trillion plastic bags. And this is equivalent to 160,000 plastic bags per second. So some of the ways that I would like you to consider your consumption is by saying no to often what we find are free things in society, whether those are straws or paper napkins at restaurants, disposable plastic utensils, the grocery bags that you get at the store, whether they're the produce bags or the bags that you walk out with at the end of the checkout, the free soap bottles and shampoo bottles that you get in hotels, when you're doing takeout, the sauce packages or the little packets of sugar, bottled water, free pens, swag bags from conventions, and even saying no when you're checking out and saying no to a paper receipt. Ask them to email it to you, or just if you don't need it, then don't ask for it. Ask them to leave it. Refuse to purchase new clothing for every gala, wedding, party, dinner, picnic, what have you. And then conserve water. This is a reminder that I like to share during Ramadan, especially when you're doing your wudu, when you're showering, when you're washing your dishes, try and conserve more water. Canadians in particular use about 250 liters of water per person per day. So even if you're turning your tap to the halfway point instead of having it at full pressure, that makes an incredible amount of difference. And refuse cosmetics that have been tested on animals and that contain plastic ingredients. So these common ingredients might be polyethylene or polypropylene. There's so many more complicated terms out there and ingredients. If you're interested in seeing if your mascara, your foundation, your toothpaste, other household commonly used items have plastic ingredients, then check out www.beatthemicrobead.com. So the next thing that I wanted to get to was reducing. And I found this to be a particularly relevant statistic. 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted globally each year. And this is so important considering that 1 billion people go hungry each day. So this is not just an environmental ask that we have of you today, but a humanitarian one. Repair what's broken. Whether it be a bicycle, phone cases, toys. I did that recently with my phone case. In terms of devices, upgrade the software, not the entire hardware. Over 34 million tons of electronic waste are thrown out worldwide every single year. And Americans in particular upgrade their phones with an average of every 18 months. And as I'm sure most of you can guess, most of these phones are still in good working condition. Another tip that we have is buy locally. The reason we ask this is so that you're reducing shipping and packaging costs. And I know during the pandemic, many of us have a tendency to purchase on Amazon. That is no surprise. If you must shop on Amazon, ask Amazon not to use plastic packaging for your orders. You can actually send them an email, which will allow them to put a note onto your file. And then they'll start reducing the packages that come, or reducing the plastic in your packages. Or you can even search frustration-free packaging in the search bar of Amazon. And then you'll be looking at orders or looking at items that have less packaging when you're doing your checkout. Another tip that we have is buy secondhand items. And to that point, since we're chatting about Amazon, Amazon has a section called warehouse deals. These are effectively previously purchased items that people have returned. So if you must shop Amazon, that is probably a better way of doing it. We recommend obviously going to Facebook Marketplace, shopping at your local thrift store, and the more local you can purchase, the better for the environment. So that way you're reducing your environmental footprint. And in terms of food, reduce your waste by storing it properly, whether it's storing food in beeswax paper or glass containers, or freezing food before it goes bad. I know many of us try and do grocery lists each week. When you do that, you inevitably end up with some waste at the end of the week. But instead of making it go to a compost, try and get it into the freezer before it goes bad so you can use it when you need to. And my last point here, I really want you to ask yourselves, is the meat that you're consuming truly halal? Has anyone ever looked at the condition of the animals when they're actually about to be slaughtered? It takes 18 more land to feed a person who consumes meat and dairy. So what I want you to really look at is, I'm not asking you all to become vegan. If you are, that's amazing. I would be a hypocrite to say that I'm vegan. I am not. But for those who are, I'm really impressed by it. Try and make more vegetarian meals for those who are not. If you can't do that, instead of making meat the central component of what you're cooking for the evening, try and make it a side dish instead. Try and have some vegetarian meals during the week. And Ramadan is a perfect time to start some of these habits and hope that they continue on. And that's another point that I want to make, is some of the points that we're sharing today by all the speakers. Yes, it's Ramadan themed. Yes, we're asking you to make these changes now. However, take these small things and continue doing it throughout the rest of your lives, ideally. My next point is repurposing. So another term for this is upcycling. 80% of the trash in oceans come from land-based activities. And 90% of the plastic bags USA produces is disposed of right away. So one of the ideas that has come into the media quite a bit is turning your plastic bags into sleeping mats for the homeless. This is something that you can definitely go onto YouTube. I've found so many videos about this, about how you can do this. And you can run a drive with your community, with your family, with your friends to see if you can also make a difference for humanity while reducing your environmental impact. Every year, the fashion industry uses 93 billion cubic meters of water. And just to put that into perspective, that's enough to meet the consumption needs of 5 million people. So instead, I encourage you to reuse old clothing for cleaning cloths, arts and crafts, pillowcases. I've even seen some creative ways of using old t-shirts and how they're turned into reusable bags that you can then use at the grocery store. Repurpose your old coffee grinds for exfoliating. Use the peels and carrots of potatoes and other veggies to make a veggie stock. And then instead of throwing it out, compost it after you've done that. Use old toothbrushes by disinfecting them and using them for cleaning. Reuse jars and plastic containers as pen holders in your office. And my last suggestion here is to reuse shoe boxes for storing, whether it's storing arts and crafts supplies for kids or anything else that's in your room or in your home. There's so many ways of using what we already have in a different way. My next point is replacing. Use what you have until you can't, or donate it to someone who can't as easily avoid using it. 2 billion tons of solid waste is generated around the world per year. During Christmas, an equivalent of 83 square kilometers of wrapping paper ends up in UK bins instead of being recycled. So I encourage you to use more eco-friendly wrapping, like wrap your gift in a scarf, or give the gift in a reusable bag, or skip the wrapping entirely. In UK alone, we use 11 billion wet wipes each year. So here, what I would recommend is if you already have them, use them, wash them, reuse them until you can't. Then afterwards, replace it with something more sustainable. Find an old towel, cut it into pieces, use that as your makeup cleaning wipe or anything else that you use wipes for in the home. Use eco-friendly cleaning products. Here, you can use vinegar for sure. But what I would say is definitely look into the type of vinegar that you're using. There's ones that are out there that are extremely harmful to the ecosystem, and there are vinegars out there that are made directly from the grains, which is what you want. Those are the ones that are 100% natural, biodegradable, vegan, hypoallergenic, and non-toxic. So look at those ones. Buy reusable dryer balls instead of dryer sheets. Some dryer balls can actually last you for about 1,000 loads as opposed to the single-use ones. Reuse water bottles that are plastic free. Buy reusable Keurig pods instead of the single-use ones. Your toothbrushes, use the bamboo ones. 1 billion toothbrushes are actually thrown out in the US each year. So this is something that we can definitely make a huge difference on. Instead of using parchment paper when you're baking, use silicone mats. When you're looking at clothing, think about the clothing you're purchasing. Instead of buying polyester and nylon-based material clothing, consider what kind of fabric you want to use. Think about going to clothing swaps or purchasing new clothing that is produced from recycled material. And just so everyone knows, what I found was that nylon and polyester actually contain a great amount of plastic. And when you're washing these clothes, they actually shed millions of plastic microfibers, which then get into our water system and then into the oceans, which is then passed from the fish for those who are not vegetarian and then into our bodies. So this is not just about the environment, but this is about your health as well. And my last resort, recycle if you must. think about the way you recycle. Are you throwing it into a bin or can it be used by someone else? There's so many things here that I wanted to say, but what I will do is tell you, please ask your community and family to see whether or not they can use it in another way. Think of that as recycling. Look at Facebook free cycle groups. You can post there all the items that you have in your home and ask people to pick it up. And you can go to thrift stores. So here, really use recycling as a last resort. I wanted to shed some light on Ecosia. This is an organization that I came across. It's a search engine that plants trees as you search off of the web. And basically what it does is for every search that you do, it's generating profit from the ads there. 80% of the profits from the ads actually goes to planting trees, and 45 searches is equivalent to 1 tree planted. There is a mobile app for iOS and Android, so I encourage you to download that as well. And as I wrap up, because I know I've gone over my 10 minutes, what I will leave you with is that we as consumers have choice. We overconsume, and we need to reduce that waste. Many of us are not policymakers here today, but we're just consumers. But we are the policymakers in our homes. Every single item we purchase is a vote for the kind of world we want to live in. We have purchasing power, so please use it appropriately. And when you're looking at the next item you're looking to get, think about it from the perspective of, does this harm or help the world? Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you, Mariam. I think that was inspiring, and all the small things that you mentioned that do add up and make a big change. It's all very important. And it's the small things that will make a bigger change and start changing our mindset. So thank you for giving us all those tips there. And for those of you who didn't catch the website, it was eco. I put it into the ecosia.org. I threw it into the chat box so you guys can use that for your searches. And I really liked your point at the end where you said that we are the policymakers in our own homes. I think that's an important message to live by. With that, I'll pass it on to Zehra, who's next up.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen and go to present, and then hope this works. What's happening? Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, and is it in present mode?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So first of all, I just want to thank Green Ummah and Mariam. Imam Talha actually messaged me and said, Zara, we need to do an event. And I reached out to Mariam and I said, you know, the perfect organization for this would be Green Ummah. And as you can see through Mariam's presentation, that was right on the ball, because I learned so much through that presentation. Thank you so much, Mariam. And when you said that quote at the end, I died. That's my favorite quote in the whole world, and literally the basis of Studio 89. So as you guys heard, I wear 2 hats. One is volunteer president of Studio 89, which aims to be good for humans, animals, and the environment in everything that we do as a fair trade, plant-based cafe. And at Umano, we aim to effectively build empathy and understanding for the interdependency of humans, animals, and the environment, because the 3 are so interconnected. So I'd like to share a little bit about that with you today, and then get into some of those tools that we spoke about. So this is also one of my favorite quotes. It says, there's no such thing as a way. When we throw anything away, it must go somewhere. So where our stuff goes is mostly landfills, garbage dumps. We ship it off to developing countries, which is really quite disturbing because they're already lacking proper waste management systems. And so our waste management system is not an equitable one. And then of course there's incinerators, but most of our stuff is staying with us on Earth. So as we're producing all this garbage over the last few decades, it's not going anywhere. And so we see mountains of garbage in many places in the world. There's one article for my fellow Canadians I'd like to recommend called it's on the 10,000 Changes website, called Where Canada Sends Its Garbage. It's like the simplest read, I promise you. It's like a 45-second read, and you're going to learn so much about where stuff goes. And I promise you, I didn't even know when I started reading this, how complex and messy the waste management system just in Ontario is. And so forget the nation and you know, countries abroad. So and part of the reason I'd encourage you to do that is because when they've done research on these mountains of garbage in other parts of the world, like India, Philippines, Malaysia, they have found clothing with Walmart tags still attached to them, brand new clothing. We are a highly consumption society, as Mariam was speaking to earlier so adequately, and we really do need to work so hard to reduce our waste. But why humans, animals, environment? What is their interconnectedness? So let me share some quick facts with you. Disease, 75% of newly infectious diseases come from animals. When we exploit animals for food or other uses, we greatly increase pandemic risks like we are experiencing now with COVID-19, and in the past we've experienced with SARS, MERS, mad cow disease, AIDS, Ebola, Spanish flu, bird flu, swine flu, the Black Death. Some people will say, but Sarah, lettuce and tomato recalls happen all the time because of E. coli. But do you guys know where E. coli comes from? The pools of animal feces that ends up running into the water supply that interacts with the lettuce and tomatoes. So even that is connected back to the amount of animal waste that we're creating. 51% of greenhouse gas emissions are due to livestock and their byproducts, which is absolutely astronomical. Species extinction. Every 24 hours, up to 150 species of plant, insect, and animal are going extinct. Between 1970 and 2010, we lost 52%. So this is just a span of the last 40 years. We lost 52% of the planet's biodiversity, sorry. We are facing so much biodiversity loss. It's really quite serious. We're currently in what scientists call the 6th mass extinction. Animal agriculture is responsible for 91% of Amazon destruction. 1 to 2 acres rainforest are cleared every second. Now, please consider how so many environment groups and even policymakers and government are working so hard to plant trees. Can you imagine how many trees are being planted at any given time? And yet how many really old trees are being wiped down? This is due to livestock. Half of the habitable land on Earth is used for agriculture. It takes 18 times more land to feed a meat and dairy consumer than it does somebody who's following a plant-based diet. 98% of the world's soy is fed to farm animals. We could feed 800 million people with grain that livestock eat in the US alone. 50% of all the crops we grow go to livestock animals. So it feeds the animals that we then go and eat, again, instead of feeding hungry children. Freshwater use, it takes 660 gallons of water to make 1 burger, equivalent of 2 months worth of showering. And so what we often hear, you know, when we're given advice on how to reduce our footprint, that we should shower less or take shorter showers. But I promise you, switching to and really taking, switching more meals to a plant-based, excuse me, diet is so effective in reducing our footprint. So what we eat and how we treat the environment are both not just animal rights issues and environment rights issues, but they're also workers' rights issues. John Oliver actually a couple of weeks ago did a really excellent episode on workers' rights in slaughterhouses. PTSD is through the roof, as well as just a lack of workplace safety in general. It's a public health issue. We covered all the different pandemics and excuse me, sorry, fasting, throat, water, lack of, you get it. Food equity issue as well, because we talked about land use, water use, all of that stuff. It's a race issue, which is surprising to many, but do you know that our government gives tons and tons of subsidies, and most development nations are giving lots of subsidies to animal agriculture because they have very powerful lobbies instead of organic fruits and vegetables. So underserved communities, for the most part, are unable to access organic fruits and vegetables, which in my personal opinion should be their right. It's a feminist issue because of what we do to the female bodies in order to breed so many female animal bodies in order to breed so many animals into existence. Just going back, one more actually, it's also a race issue because it's, all the climate crisis that we speak about, it's going to impact, and it is impacting the most marginalized communities in the world the most. So it's the people that are already living in really dire circumstances who face the consequences of our personal footprint. And of course, it's a personal health issue. And I won't spend too much time on this because Megan will speak to this. And I'll just say that I'm really looking forward to the upcoming 2 presentations. So animal agriculture and its byproducts are the leading cause of climate change, which is more than, according to the UN, the entire world's largest oil companies combined, and greater than the entire world's transportation system combined. I believe I used the term astronomical before. I would like to evoke it again. What's so interesting is you'll see that some of the biggest newspapers, CNN, CBC, BBC, oh, they're not papers anymore, they're all digital, but you know what I mean. BBC, The Guardian, National Geographic, they are constantly telling us, based on reports by the UN, because UN studies the studies that are being done at Oxford and Cambridge and whatnot. And so they'll tell us constantly that avoiding meat and dairy is the single biggest way to reduce our impact on Earth. And it will reduce our impact by 73 to 75%, our environmental footprint, which is, did I say astronomical already? But you know what's so weird is that, so let's take a look at these UN Sustainable Development Goals. I'd like to bring your attention to 1 and 2, no poverty. Number 2, zero hunger. 6, clean water. 11, sustainable cities and communities. 12, responsible consumption and production. 13, climate action. 14, life below water. 15, life on land. What's so interesting about these goals is these are directly related to everything I've just presented to you about animal agriculture, yet at UN conferences, we're still serving meat and dairy. And why is that? Why is that, Sarah? And the reason is because we're so used to living a certain way. We're so used to what we know to be our tradition, what we're used to culturally, what seems convenient, and it is convenient, right? It's definitely inconvenient to do all the things that Mariam and I are suggesting that you do, because it's so easy just to go to the dollar store, local Walmart, and pick up a plastic toothbrush. So it certainly takes a little bit of work, but not only do we need to demand this of ourselves, but we need to advocate for this with the greatest institutions, the biggest policymakers as well. So one really neat way of learning about our own personal footprint is to check out a couple of these websites. One is footprintcalculator.org. So this is my footprint, which is really troubling for me, can I just say? This is insane. And the reason my footprint is so large is because of my past travel, or because we eat out so much. And so this was a wake-up call for me to say, no, this is not a great idea. However, I would also like to show you another calculator that I went to, which is footprint.wwf.org. And what's so interesting with this one is that it shows that I'm right on target. But here it shows, can you guys see this cursor moving? Maybe you can. Oh, you can? Okay, great. So it shows the world average. It shows my footprint, which is way bigger than the world average. And then here's the UK average. So instead of focusing on how much I'm doing better than the UK average and this sort of false comfort I'm getting from this particular test, I'm going to focus on the fact that my footprint is way bigger than the world average. I actively need to work harder at making food at home, making sure I'm not bringing more plastics into the house and all the packaging that food comes in, all the containers. Even if it's biodegradable, it takes a lot of energy to make that product. The waste is still so important when it comes to these tiny little things in our life that sometimes we don't even notice. There's another one called the vegan calculator for those that already follow a plant-based diet, or for those who wish to, walk this journey with us. You can actually put in how long you've been vegan, how many months you have been vegan, and it will tell you how many animals' lives you've saved, what your CO2 footprint is, and how much you've saved, how many forests you've saved, grain and water, which I think is just the coolest little tip. Also under here, you see it says join the vegan Facebook community, the vegan Muslim community. I highly recommend this. You don't have to be vegan, but it's a great way of connecting with people who are also walking this journey and getting tips and tricks on what to eat for, say, iftar or sahur. And you're going to find so many. I wanted to list them for you, but there's just not enough minutes because we want to keep it short, give you lots of time for Q&A. But there are so many wonderful Muslim vloggers and bloggers now who are sharing what they're eating, and they're all over the world. And if people can follow a plant-based diet in Palestine, then believe you me, we certainly can over here. Another really cool website I wanted to share with you is Plant-Based Data. A local for us, doctor here in Toronto by the name of Dr. Tushar Mehta, he sort of spearheaded this. And what I love about his work is that he also, looks at the human animal environment interconnectedness and interdependency really well. So in this website, you'll find over 1,000 peer-reviewed articles organized into reference lists and cataloged by topic. So easy to learn about the environment, our health, the diseases that I spoke to you about earlier, economics and policy. We can dive deeper into these. So it's a really great tool. And I also want to speak to you about Umano. So one of the things we're doing is, as I spoke of, researching empathy, because we're actively working to build more of it. So one thing we've realized, which I'd like to share with you, is that it doesn't just take knowledge of, knowing what's wrong for us to engage in active empathy. It actually also takes courage. It means stepping outside your comfort zone and doing something uncomfortable and saying, I'm just gonna try this out, and if I fail, that's okay, I'll try it again, right? It takes a healthy self-esteem. It can be so easy for us to say, everybody else is eating these kebabs, so if I have some kebabs, it doesn't really make a difference, right? But that vegan calculator will tell you that it actually does. And even if you're in an environment where you're at a party, maybe this is 2023 and we're allowed to party again, right? What you're going to notice is when you set a certain standard for yourself, then others will follow. There then will be alternatives available at these parties. And this is how change happens. You're seeing just throughout the last year how many new plant-based restaurants have opened up all over the place. At least here in Ontario, we're seeing more and more in the Peel region and Toronto, etc. And enduring anxiety has everything to do with empathy. So as many of us are based out of living in developed countries, we don't necessarily notice climate change. It doesn't impact our life directly. But I don't know about you, when Mariam was sharing those statistics, I had anxiety. I was like, oh no, what are we doing? Why are we doing this, right? And so learning is also going to give you anxiety, and then also taking steps to alter and step outside your comfort zone and step into the shoes of people who are living in communities who are suffering because of our decisions, or even stepping into the shoes of animals who are suffering because of our lifestyle, is definitely going to create a little bit of discomfort within us. And it's okay. I just want you to know that it's okay to experience that and to just sit with it and write it out. So here we are, Umano, Change Through Empathy. You can always get in touch with me, sarah@umano.org. I'm also really easily found on social media. And I'll just share one quick last story with you, and that is that 2 years ago, Studio 89, this right before COVID, we organized an event called the Interfaith Zero Waste Plant-Based Iftar. And it was one of the coolest events that I've participated in. And I'm hoping that next Ramadan or the following Ramadan, whenever we're allowed to get back to normal, it would be so cool to see how many wonderful organizations came together today for this event. I can just imagine what we can do the world over if we commit to it. So please get involved, please volunteer, please follow Green Iftar's work, Green Ummah's work. Green Ummah worked so hard to put this event on so quickly. So please follow along, follow their journey, support as much as you can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zahra. That was really inspiring as well. And I think our main takeaway from that one is that this issue is larger than just the environment, right? There's eco justice and so many other isms that come into play here. And if we really want to make an impact on the world, we have to start thinking about the environment. And I always think about it as building forward. We have to start making the environment a centerpiece of all our policy decisions, whether at home or within government. So thank you for that presentation there. To everyone, I think we may be running a little bit past the 1 o'clock cutoff time. So we're gonna let the speakers speak and have our Q&A, and we'll push this back a little bit. So if you can stay, by all means, please do stay. If you need to jump off the call at 1 o'clock for whatever reason, please feel free to ask your questions, and we'll do our best to get them answered. And then you can catch up with it in the recording. With that, we'll pass it on to the next speaker, who is Imam Talha. So Imam Talha, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for that sentence. Yeah, that's make it a little bit easier for me. So that's my presentation. Now, you can see it already.
We can see your presentation.
Thank you, Adil, for a last sentence that will make it much easier for me to go through my presentation. Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, I'm Barak from Germany. Maybe first and foremost, I'm the first non-native speaker. So the last English international conference that I have is a long time ago. So sorry for my English if it's not like yours. I'm really happy to share you my thought about mindfulness and compassion and ethics in Islam. And it's really complementing the presentations from Miriam and Zahra. It's really beautiful to see the way we go through these issues and come to maybe a conclusion altogether. And my point will be adding the theological part of these issues and showing how important it is for us to recognize and be aware about the animals and animal ethics in Islam. So I start with a quote, which is maybe in other words in my title: there's really no such thing as a voiceless. They are only the deliberately silenced or the preferably unheard. And I think that's the best way to describe other creatures and how we are acting upon them without knowing how they feel and think about it. As you all heard, I'm an ambassador of Green Iftar, and all what Mariam and Zahra said and showed you is part of our Green Iftar goals, and you can see it online on Instagram, Facebook, and you can go on the homepage and download our guide and look how you can just make your Ramadan and all your life after Ramadan, day by day, more sustainable and better for all the creations we have on earth. Now, the first word in my title is mindfulness, and with other words, it's taqwa. By the way, the bird, I don't know if anybody know the name of the bird. This is a bird which is mentioned in the Quran, and maybe anyone who's knowing the name can put it on the chat, and we will look after it if it's right or wrong. Non-human animals is maybe a new name or title for so-called animals. We call them non-human animals, and we are human animals. That was for me a really new information when I began to research on animal ethics in Islam, to call them and call us also animal, because animal means just being a creature with a soul, and so are non-human animals. And in the Quran, the fact is that we always don't know how animals maybe feel or live, laugh, and many of them is like we do. Here are some facts which I want to give you, um, just to know, just quick facts with some animals. Elephants, for example, bury more than they breathe. Ants recognize each other in the mirror. Dolphins call each other by name. Rats like to laugh together. Orcas still live at home with mom when they are 30. And pigs never forget, yet are always optimistic. And according to current research, more intelligent than dogs, humans' best friends. And pig is maybe one animal which is in our culture, or as you all know, not allowed to eat. But it's not an animal which is bad or not to laugh, because God just made it haram to eat. So this could be continued indefinitely. Unfortunately, we know most of these creatures rather rarely with these properties. They are better known as ivory, tuna, ham, steak, and so on. The point, compassion. So mindfulness and compassion, Islam. Compassion, I will show you how we have to know the values about these, and just have to ask us some questions like these. What are we allowed to do with animals? Are we allowed to kill them to eat their meat? Are we allowed to imprison them to look at them? Maybe we torture them to make scientific discoveries. Maybe breed, impregnate, milk, and slaughter them for our own purposes. These are kinds of questions that animal ethics seeks to answer. And the most important question for us now is, as Muslims, is all of this Islamic? So we are now in Ramadan. We want to take this time to reflect on maybe many issues. And I think one of the most important issues is to look at how we are eating, what we are eating, and where it came from, and so on. There is a concept called speciesism. We all know racism, sexism, and so on. And there is one other ism which is maybe not that known as the other ones. And this is speciesism. What is speciesism? It refers to the moral discrimination of living beings solely lie on the basis of their species membership. So as a species like we are human beings, we believe that we are better than other species and are acting like it, and don't be aware and reflecting on the animals with dignity or something like this. And this is, I know, even especially for us Muslims, it's challenging because we are allowed to use animals for certain things. But for me, the most important question is today, nowadays, we live in the 21st century. Do we need to do all of this, what we are doing now, beginning by eating, using them to do what we are doing? Carnism is the philosophy of these issues, and this is, maybe you know, Melanie Joy. She describes this ideology, and she want to just point out that is according to which the consumption of certain animal species is considered ethically justifiable and appropriate. Again, this is also challenging the Islamic theological point, because there are some animals in the Quran which are allowed to consumption for consumption, and some of them not. So my my conclusion will be maybe interesting for you when I just point out the challenging part, and yes, go with it. Now, make the focus on animal ethics in Islam. I was really amazed when I just began researching on animal ethics in Islam, and just see the role from the animals in the Quran, and how God is talking to them, and how God is let them speak to us and to many prophets we all know. Just some points. We have, as you know, 114 surahs in the Quran, and 7 of them have animal names, like cow, cattle, beast, the ant, the spider, running, and these are maybe horse or camels, elephant. Yeah, 7 surahs are called by animal names. A total of 29 species are mentioned in the Quran. And as we believe the Quran is the words of God, and if God is choosing something, every word is important where it is, and we have to reflect on why God is using these animals, and to be more concerned and aware of the 29 animals. Why are they mentioned, and how are they mentioned, for which reason, and how we can take ethics from it for our life and consumptions today. The Quranic value of animals. The first verse was for me um, yeah, one of the change makers in my life, and you will know it in the end what changed my life the last year. I wasn't that aware that the animals are seen like us human beings, and God is saying there is no creature or animal. Dabba is a word which is whereas you have many opinions on it, what it could be, but one opinion is that it's creatures in general, but animals in um, concrete way. So there is no creature or animal on or within the earth or bird that flies with its wings, except that there are communities like you. That was the first shocking moment for me, that we see us as a ummah. So, and God is using the word ummah. There's communities, and the Arabic version is ummah for the animals also. And this is not enough. God is saying, we have not neglected in the register thing. Then unto their Lord they will be gathered. Even animals will be gathered when we as human beings were gathered. So I was always like, I don't want to be bad with any fellow human being, with my neighbors, my friends, my families, because I don't want to have to um, be. I want to be aware when I'm gathered by God, so I have no points, no problems with any other human being. And now, when I realized the verse here that animals will also be gathered, I was like, okay, there will be maybe dozens of cows and chickens and also many other animals will ask me, Talha, you know how they were treating us, and you uh, eat, ate meat, and never reflect on these issues. Second verse, and there are many verses. I just can mention all of them, but this is also interesting. Do you not see that to God prostrates whoever is in the heavens and whoever is on the earth? So everything who's living, every living creation and creatures are just making dhikr and calling to God. And the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, the trees, the moving creatures, and many of the people. So we are mentioning between mountains, moon, stars, animals, and animals. So there's a uh, there's a just naming and framing people with animals and other creations which God created. So just being, don't be don't believe that you are something better than other creatures or creations of God. This verse is really mind blowing, and just again to make it just to be aware of the Quran is a word of God, and it's now nearly 1,500 years old. But the verse is like more actual and current than any other verse I've read in the last couple of days researching these issues. So this is the first part, whom God cursed, and he said, he is the devil. Surely I, the devil, will take of thy bondmen and appointed portion, and surely I will lead them astray, us human beings, and surely I will arouse desires in them, and surely I will command them. Now, to what? Yeah, this was really shocking for me and overwhelming to recognize that God is talking about issues we are now living and acting upon in the Quran and 1,500 years ago. And they will cut the cattle ears. If you don't believe that this is actually the word of God, just look up any other translation in your language, and you will be maybe also shocked. So, and they will cut the cattle ears, and surely I will command them, and they will change God's creation. Who chooses Satan for a patron instead of Allah is verily a loser, and his loss is manifest. So, the 2 points, cutting the cattle ears and changing God's creation, as we see in the presentation from Maryam and Zahra, we are now doing this what God is talking there. We are really changing the creation of God. We are the last creatures, the human beings are the last creatures after creating all the galaxies, the plants, and the animals. The human beings are the last one. But we are the first creatures which are destroying all of what came before us. And this is something which God should really just make it clear here that this is the work and way of the devil to do it. So we are now that this is the reason why I asked the question: do we want to have a deal with God or with the Satan, with the devil? As we all know, when we are gonna out or want to buy some food, it's important for us to look whether it's halal or not. So halal is in the Quran, the word halal permitted occurs 6 times, 4 times are combined with by tayyib, good. An important statement at the outset: eating animal products is from an Islamic theological point of view, it's a permission. It's not a recommendation, not an ought or an obligation at all. It's just we are allowed to do it. So, and we have to look nowadays if it's still fits the points which make them allowed to eat. The one verse which is very important for the halal point of view is eat of what God has bestowed upon you, that which is permissible and good, and give thanks for God's benefits. So maybe you will ask yourself, I never heard about the second word, tayyib. I just thought it should be halal. Yes, the point is halal nowadays means both of these words, but what could tayyib mean? Because why doesn't God let halal stand on its own? And this is just a possible way to understand and interpret the word tayyib, but some scholars say that this describes the moral aspects in this regard. In this context, we could speak of so-called species-appropriate animal husbandry. When considering halal alone, factory farming is not excluded. It's just that the last step before the animal is being halal, that a Muslim bacha come and make the slaughter. So environment care, this is all for me the most effective way to be friendly, environmentally human being, just to make aware of what we are eating, what we are doing, like all of the points which are already said. I don't want to say all of the points again. And the Quran is also very clear in this point. And do not mischief on the earth after it has been set in order. That will be the best for you if you have faith. So there was an order, but today there is no order anymore. When we look about the amazing husbandries, the farmings, and the poor animals, how they live, and no, they don't really live, how they die. They just came to earth and began just the process of dying, and that's not a process of living. So what do we do with our way of life today? Just some points about the Prophet and how he was with animals. As we all know, he was really kind to them, and all of the animals had names. Even all the things he just owned has names, because he was really aware of what he was doing and owning. And maybe just some sayings he just said: Allah curses all who mutilate an animal. And to hear from the Prophet of mercy just a word like Allah curses, it was not the case in general, but his wordings regarding animals was really, really clear and hard for people who are who are cursed animals. Maybe one really sympathetic, beautiful point is he buried the bird of a boy when he was, I don't really know I forgot the context, but he was maybe just giving a lecture, and he just asked, where this boy called so and so, I forgot his name, and the people said, yeah, he's just sad today because his bird died, and he was angry to the people because they didn't tell him this that, and he just went to the boy and just buried the bird of him, and just show us today how important is even the dying of one bird. Yes. My conclusion. I will show you just maybe you all asked. I couldn't really follow the questions during my presentation, but many people when I talk about these issues are just asking, how will you celebrate the Feast of Abraham? Will you sacrifice an animal? Is there an alternative? And this is the most frequent question. To be honest, I'm at this point where I just look for an alternative, and it's really amazing just to see scholars like Imam Malik even began to talk about alternative possibilities, and we have to be sure and careful that this is not an obligation, like we have to pray 5 times a day or fast in Ramadan or to be good to other people. It's not just, I don't want to reduce the practice of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, but we have this categories to be aware that something is just a recommendation or an oath or just an obligation. And to sacrifice an animal, I'm not really sure. I'm not a scholar at all, but I'm just looking for better alternatives for all living creatures, first and foremost for the animals, but to sacrifice less animals will be better for our environment and for our people and against poverty and so on. So I have my answer is not really. I'm not really in the end of my research, but I'm looking for an alternative just to be more aware and be careful with the creation of God. Before I end, I will show you a really beautiful passage from Ali Shariati. He's just making all of what I said in one really beautiful quote, asking some questions. The title is "Who or What is Your Ismail?" Just reflect on these words. You are now in Mina, the stage of Abraham. You are beginning to act like Abraham. And as we all know, Abraham had to sacrifice his son. So we are at this point. He had brought his son Ismail here to sacrifice him. Who or what is your Ismail? Your rank, your honor, your profession, money, house, farm, car, your love, your knowledge, social class, art, clothes, your life, your youth, your beauty. What I can know. But you know yourself. Whoever and whatever it is, you must bring it with you to sacrifice here. And what it is, I cannot tell you, but I can give you examples. Whatever weakens your faith, whatever keeps you from taking responsibility, whatever is a hurdle for you to hear the call and confess the truth, whatever forces you to flee, whatever are reasons for your comfort, whatever makes you blind and deaf, that is what you are to sacrifice. And I find that so overwhelming because when we just go to the Eid al-Adha to pray our feast prayer, we began just with the prayer, then listening to the sermon of the Imam, and then go sacrificing. So there are so many steps to reflect on what we will do after this. And I would say in the 21st century, we should go further and ask ourselves if it's really necessary today to do all of this, what we are doing. So my personal conclusion is maybe some of you just thought it, and now I will tell you it. Be more, as my first conclusion is personal conclusion. Be more aware, mindful, and compassionate as possible. And for me, I chose now it's 1 year ago during the last Eid al-Adha to go vegan. So I'm a Muslim and vegan, and I'm now researching on this issue, animal ethics in Islam, from this point of view, just to look if it's compatible to be Muslim and just eating non-animal products, and it's possible. As you see, I'm still living, and that are also. And on a theoretical point of view, it's also very important to recognize that this is possible, because many people think that it's kind of a sin not to eat animal products, but it isn't. Now, as you see how the animals are treating, it's even a good deed. It's a hasana in the regards to our spiritual relationship to God, to be more aware how He's created the creation, the animals, and be aware to be more environmentally and just animal friendly and so on. So I think that was the end. Yes. Thank you for your attention, and it was also longer than I had time for, but I hope it was a little bit inspiring and interesting for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Jazakallah Imam Taha. That was really enlightening and a lot of important points for us to touch upon as we move forward. But I think we really have to analyze our relationship with not just humans, but all living things on the planet. And thank you for raising
Exactly. Yes.
that you did. With that, we will pass it on to Megan, to our last presenter, last but not least. And yeah, Megan, the stage is yours.
How much time do we have, Adil?
If you can keep it at, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes at a maximum.
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank you.
See. Oh, my MacBook is very secure. It does not want to show my screen. There we go. Okay, let's see. Great, everybody see? Okay, so I'm going to be talking about how to have a climate conscious suhoor and iftar. So if we have anybody watching and joining us today who isn't Muslim, suhoor and iftar are the two meals we eat during Ramadan. We may eat more meals, but they are significant because suhoor is the meal we eat before we start our fast in the morning, the early morning, and iftar is the meal that we break our fast with. So a bit about me, I love food. Anybody who's watching that knows me knows this. I can't stop talking about it, thinking about it, researching it. So I've studied from all angles, I guess you could say. So I've studied the nutrition of food and the health aspects in university. I studied the art of food at culinary school, and my work in the food industry, developing food products as a food scientist, I've learned the science of food. So if you're wondering what a food scientist does, there are lots of things we can do, but what I've done for my career is to work in R&D and food product development. And so I take ideas and I bring them to consumers. So somebody might say, please design, it could be anything, a pickle. I worked in the pickle industry for a while. So somebody wants a spicy dill pickle. So I would source ingredients, I would create the recipe, I would work with the factory to figure out how to make it at scale. I might present it to the customers who might be the retailers or the brand owners, and then I would help the factory produce it. So that's kind of what I do. So the environmental impact of animal agriculture, the other panelists have gone over how significant it is. And so the most impactful change that we can make as individuals is to adopt a plant-based diet. There are lots of other things we can do as well. We can contact our political leaders and request change, but a lot of those greater changes aren't things that we can necessarily manage ourselves or take on ourselves, but to empower ourselves and make truly a big difference, we can adopt a plant-based diet or transition to one. Every meal that we choose that's plant-based versus centered on animal products is a step in the right direction. So whole food plant-based eating is exceptionally healthy. This is the diet that people who live in the blue zones, which are parts of the world where people live the longest and the best. Now, there are other components to their wellness, such as having a sense of community. They continue to move into their old age. They have purpose, but their diets are typically completely plant-based or almost entirely plant-based. Plant-based eating is nutritionally dense. It's naturally low in fat, saturated fat. There's no cholesterol in plant-based foods. It's high in fiber and it's high in antioxidants. It's high in all kinds of things, but those are the main things that we worry about in developed countries. Surprisingly, only 5% of Canadians eat enough fiber. This problem is eradicated. If you adopt a plant-based diet, you will be consuming plenty of fiber, and sufficient fiber intake actually reduces your risk for many of the diseases that unfortunately afflict Westerners. Canada's food guide, the updated version was released a couple years ago by Health Canada, and it's something that we, those of us who are Canadian, can really be proud of. It's entirely evidence-based, and in this new iteration, it was changed a bit, and it actually took out the meat group and the dairy groups. So now the food guide it looks like whole grains, protein sources, and also plants and vegetables. Another nice side effect of whole food plant-based eating is that it really helps to manage our weight almost effortlessly. And another benefit, it supports gut health. There's so much exciting, just incredible research coming out now between the links of our gut health and our mood and our cognitive abilities. So if we eat plants, they bring all kinds of micronutrients, fiber, bacteria, and those work in conjunction with our brain, and they really can affect our mood for the positive, which is important, especially this time as we go through this pandemic. So Ramadan, though the purpose of Ramadan and the focus of Ramadan is not food, it is something that we tend to think about while we're fasting. It's also an opportunity to celebrate. Dining during Ramadan is an opportunity to celebrate our cultures, our traditional recipes, and enjoy fellowship with other Muslims. It's an opportunity for mindful eating as well. We can really think about how good the food tastes. You know, that first bite or for that first sip of whatever it is when we break our fasts is sometimes just such a joy. Because many of us are eating less food, if we are only eating sahur and iftar, or some of us skip sahur and just have iftar, we do want to try to optimize the food that we eat for nutritional density so that we feel our best during this month of Ramadan. So sahur. It's important that we choose our sahur meal carefully. We want to eat foods that are slow digesting so that it takes longer for the body to process them, and so we feel full longer. Fiber coming from whole grains and plants is a great way to do that. Protein as well as whole food plant-based fats. So greens are also great because they're just so nutrient dense. I recommend you prepare as much as you can the night before. I don't know if anybody else is clumsy in the morning, but I've already cut myself chopping veggies on when I was preparing my first sahur. So if you can, it just helps. It just makes the morning a little bit faster and pleasant. So I'm going to give you some ideas that I was really excited to find when I transitioned to a plant-based diet. This isn't a new one. Lots of people are familiar. This is fava beans. So beans and lentils are the healthiest sources of plant-based protein. They are incredibly cheap. They don't require refrigeration. If you buy them in bulk, they contribute very little to packaging waste. They are accessible everywhere, and they're actually so nutrient dense. This meal is great because you can add some tahini, which tastes delicious, and that's a great source of plant-based fats. And you can add veggies, you could add some whole grain toast, and you're going to feel full for a long time. Another thing that some people here may know, and some people who are newer to plant-based eating may not know about, is the tofu scramble. So tofu can be prepared in so many different ways, and I was really excited to see that I could replicate scrambled eggs with tofu. So the way to do this most effectively is to use a little bit of black salt, because black salt contains sulfur and it gives it that eggy taste. You can also add a little bit of turmeric to make it more yellow if you want. It's not necessary, but turmeric, as we know, is just incredibly healthy. You can add some sauteed greens. You can add some fresh veggies. You can add some avocado, because avocado is a great source of plant-based fat. And another trick I like to do is make a really big batch of tofu scramble. So have it one day, perhaps something like how it's presented on the first plate. And then on the second day, you can add some spices and you can make it into breakfast tacos or breakfast burritos. It's really easy. It'll save you a lot of time and it'll keep you full. Soybeans have really got a bad rap, and it's unfortunate because they are incredibly healthy. They do not negatively affect men's or women's hormones. If anything, they positively affect them. And soy milk is probably the best dupe for cow's milk. It has comparable protein, comparable fat, comparable flavor and mouthfeel, and it's very, very accessible as well. So just wanted to say that it's probably, if you were choosing a plant-based milk, I would recommend soy milk. A lot of people are looking at almond milk, but to be honest, a lot of the nut milks don't actually contain very many nuts. You can tell if they're really low calorie per cup. There's probably very, very few nuts in that carton. So soy milk is just a great source, but have whichever non-dairy milk you like. Okay. So another kind of miracle ingredient for breakfast is chickpea flour. Chickpea flour, similarly to tofu, you can add black salt and turmeric, and you can make it into an omelet. So you can make it this form of omelet. You can make it into a fold over omelet. You can saute those veggies, add whatever you like. You can also make it into quiche. Not everybody knows that. Chickpea flour quiche or frittata is incredibly filling. I often meal prep chickpea flour quiche, and it lasts really well for the whole week. Okay. If you want to try a more sweet sahur, overnight oats are very popular, and for good reason. You can fill them up with really healthy seeds and nuts, berries, coconut. All of these things will be contributing fiber to help with that slow digestion and all kinds of nutrients. Smoothie bowls are exciting. They're beautiful. I would caution you from having smoothies perhaps every day. Well, you could. They're definitely healthy. The only thing with a smoothie is the blender does some of that chewing and digesting for you so that your body doesn't have to. So it might cause your body to digest it more quickly. So you might not stay as full as long. You can, though, add nut butters. You can add coconut, granola, seeds. Those things will help slow down the digestive process. And definitely you can add lots of chopped fruit at the end as well. I'd also recommend, if you're doing either of these, it may be helpful to add hemp seeds to add some extra protein, or any protein powder, plant-based protein powder of your choice. Okay, iftar, breaking fast time. So the picture on the right shows us what Canada's Food Guide now recommends us how we should eat. Now, this is not necessarily what our meal needs to look like, but it breaks down the food that we should be eating. So half our plate should be fruits and vegetables. That can be a combination of cooked and raw, whatever you like. We want nutrient diversity, so we want to eat as many different plants as possible. A quarter of the plate is whole grains. Most of us are familiar with rice, maybe quinoa and wheat in the West, but there are so many other grains that are incredibly delicious and healthy. Teff is an exciting grain. Some of you may be familiar with that. Teff is what injera is made out of. Maybe I'm pronouncing that poorly, but for Ethiopian and Eritrean food, it's an ancient grain that's very much like quinoa, actually. Millet is also really healthy. And you can also purchase bean and lentil-based pastas, which are great. From the protein section, again, beans, lentils, nuts and seeds, and tofu are great sources of plant-based protein. If we eat like this for our iftar, we're going to feel full, but not as heavy. A lot of us really look forward to the treats that Ramadan brings, and some of them are fried foods. So you don't have to cut them out, but just try reducing the frequency that you're eating them, or the portion size, and just try to focus on nutrient density. So again, chickpea flour, such a strong ingredient. It's what pakora are made of. I know lots of people love having pakora, and I do too. The air fryer has been a wonderful invention because we can now make pakora that are still crunchy without as much oil. That'll keep you feeling healthier. You could also bake them or even do them in a toaster oven if you really want to save energy and you're not making a huge portion. Dal, dal, we all know and love dal. We usually have it with white rice, but why not try having it with brown rice or quinoa or any of the other grains? It's really delicious. Just make sure to have, so this would encompass half your plate because those each are the quarters that you're supposed to have for whole grains and protein. And you also want to have another half plate portion of veggies. So this, believe it or not, is an Afghan chapli kebab, and it's made out of Beyond Meat. Beyond Meat, for anybody who hasn't tried it, and Impossible Meat are actually very, very delicious. Now, they may not be something that you would want to eat on a daily basis. They're not as healthy as beans and lentils or tofu, but they are certainly wonderful, wonderful marvels of food science. I have to applaud my peers in the industry for creating them because they really help people transition over. And another thing is you don't have to actually use entirely a recipe of pure meat or Beyond Meat. If you want to transition yourself or your family, you could start by doing, say if you're making kebabs, you could do 3/4 meat or Beyond Meat and 1/4 red lentils. Red lentils sub into meat dishes so well. So that's a way that you can slowly transition as well. You don't have to just make your whole meal entirely plant-based. You can just slowly wean yourself and your family members down, and then the transition will be less abrupt. And your taste buds, I swear, they will adjust. So those are just Beyond and Impossible. I'm going to show you 2 recipes that I love to make for my non-plant-based eating friends, and they always love them. Very, very much crowd-pleasing recipes. So summer rolls, they're very easy. They are beautiful. You can fill them with all kinds of colorful veggies. You can put tofu in instead of shrimp, and they're just so delicious. You have your fat coming from the peanut sauce. Really easy, really fun. Everybody in the family can join in. You can also meal prep these in the sense that you can pre-chop all your veggies and then just wrap them before you eat them. The wrapped rolls don't really last that well in the fridge overnight, but they're great in the immediate time frame. You can also buy, I don't know if my mouse is visible. Okay, it's not visible, but typically they're filled with rice noodles, which is white rice, but you can actually now get brown rice noodles at a lot of Asian grocers. So that's just a way to bring more whole grains into this meal. This is a very simple meal, but it is an Oshi Glows recipe. Oshi Glows is a blog and a series of cookbooks by a recipe developer from the GTA. And it's just, this recipe, everybody loves it. The meat, so to speak, is made out of walnuts and lentils. The cream sauce or the sour cream is made out of cashews. Cashews are a bit expensive, and there are some concerns about the ethics of cashew agriculture. So a great sub for cashews are sunflower seeds. They're very healthy, they're a little bit cheaper, and they work really well to make plant-based cream sauces. Another fun way to enjoy a plant-based meal would be to do a grazing board. Very trendy. Everybody's doing them. I'm sure your friends are doing them, and you've seen them on their Instagram feeds. So all kinds of things. Obviously, you want to include lots of veggies. You can include whole grain crackers and breads. You can put hummus on this. You can purchase some plant-based cheeses, or you could try making some yourself. But this would be a really fun and beautiful kind of presentation for a plant-based iftar. So, because I work in the food industry, I just wanted to give you all some insider information. We all know companies exist to make money, right? The way the food industry makes money is by creating food for people. And they want to make food, or we want to make food that people want to buy. So there is a bit of a narrative that makes it seem like the food industry is evil. wants to cause people to be addicted to products. And I have never encountered a single solitary person in my entire career who had such thoughts. All anybody wants to do is just make products that will sell. So we as consumers have a lot more power than we know. The best thing we can do, we're often told the best thing we can do is to shop with our wallets. And that is very impactful, but that doesn't always tell the food companies exactly why we are purchasing one product over another. Food companies typically are lower profit than other industries, so they don't necessarily spend as much on consumer research. So there's a lot of gut intuition that goes into product development. So what I want you all to do is complain. We love consumer feedback. It really helps guide product development and also refinement of products that are already on the market. It takes a long time and it costs a lot of money and resources to reformulate a product. And a lot of the products that we purchase in the grocery store, they've been on the market for 10, 20, 30 years. So they may have been formulated when trends were different. Now that people are moving towards more plant-based diets, in Canada, there are so many more Muslims. So we want to make sure that ingredients are halal if they aren't plant-based. And also consumers are so much more savvy and concerned, as we should be, about sustainability and packaging. All these things are important things that we can let food companies know by complaining. So I just want to say, the best way to complain is not via social media, which is a little bit contrary to what we would think and what at least millennials and Gen Z typically would be doing. We tend to go on social media. We might tag the company, we might go on their Instagram page, and they may respond. But what people don't know is that that response is coming from a social media manager typically, but the complaint department, the customer service department, is a separate department, and they're often not talking. So the most effective way for your complaints to be heard is to send an email or to call, because those complaints go typically into systems. They're categorized and they're logged. The entirety of your conversation or your email will be saved. And though that is the feedback that companies use when they do quarterly or monthly reviews, and that is the feedback that we use to reformulate or start new products. So unfortunately, the voices that are most typically heard, the consumer complaint voices that are most typically heard are, well, not unfortunately, it's good that they're heard, but it's typically the older people, and they often have different concerns than the younger half of the adult food industry consumers. So I just wanted to share that. I wanted you to know that you are more empowered than you realize. And if you would please complain, if you don't like the packaging or you wish it was a more recyclable form of plastic, it would make my job much easier, because I often know and I want to change things, but if I can't prove that there will be a boost in sales or that consumers really care, then I often don't have the support to make that change. But anyway, thank you everybody for listening. Ramadan Mubarak. And thank you to Green Ummah and Studio 89 for inviting me to speak.
Awesome, thank you very much. That was very insightful as well, and I think a lot of good takeaways on mindful eating. And I know a lot of people will probably be going back to the recording to look at some of the recipes and ideas there. So thank you for that. With that, we have hit 1:35, and this was initially supposed to conclude at 1 o'clock. So I think as speakers, if you can give me a thumbs up if you're comfortable if we were to collect questions and pass them on to you directly, and we can conclude the event so people can continue with the rest of their days. Yeah, I got a thumbs up from Zara and Mariam and Talha and Megan, if that's okay with you. Yep, okay, perfect. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot them to us on any of our social media at Green Ummah on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and we'll get them to the speaker, and we'll find a way to get the answer back to you as well. So with that, thank you all for participating, for engaging with us, and for coming out to this event. And we hope that we've given you some tips and tricks to make this a greener Ramadan for you, and some tips and tricks that you can take on beyond Ramadan into your everyday life as well. And thank you to the speakers for all the information that you've shared and all of your wonderful insights. Again, this will be available online, so keep an eye out on our YouTube page and our social media, which will link to it. We'll try and get that up as soon as possible so you can get some of these recipes and make your suhoor and iftar for tomorrow. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.